Hello, my name is Connor Golden, and today I will be presenting my crisis communication. I will be first talking about the brand overview and crisis context, which is about Helios Aerospace Solutions, which is a publicly held aerospace manufacturing corporation in the commercial spaceflight industry, meaning, they deal with rockets, satellites, launch sites. They work with the likes of NASA, Roscosmos, Blue Horizon, um, SpaceX, all of that. And of course, in such a very prominent industry, something with a lot of media attention, there is a lot of risk. There is the issue of launch failures, technical malfunction, workplace safety issues, and national security threats. Even something minor can cause scandal and concern, or, of course, with increased importance and in such a very tightly regulated industry that deals with national security, there'll be greater regulation and public scrutiny and media attention. So there needs to be a lot of preparedness by Helios Aerospace Solutions regarding their, crisis communication framework and being able to plan for and be prepared for any situation that may arise. Next, we'll be talking about the risk audit and early warning signals. So, of course, there's a slew of different threats and worries that could arise in this industry, and of course, there are warning signals with them. Whether it's launch failures or workplace safety incidents and cybersecurity threats. There might be something that goes wrong with a rocket booster. There might be something that due to some sort of oversight issue on a production line that a employee gets hurt. There might be someone who is trying to commit industrial sabotage, corporate espionage, or something. And of course, there are warning signs to this. There might be engineers raising concerns for something regarding that rocket design. There might be a report put out there that there is something wrong in a factory and how things are being done there. There might be, in regard to cybersecurity threat, there might be some unusual activity going on that's raising some alarm bells and detection alerts and so on. For part two of risk audit and early warning signals, there, of course, is the possibility of increased regulation or ethical scrutiny. There's digital misinformation campaigns. There's integrated and so forth. So there might be stuff like something going on, some legislation being passed in Congress. There might be media bringing a lot of attention to something that is maybe worrying some people, maybe is kind of seeming a little uncomfortable for a lot of people. Um, and of course, there might, of course, be unions or rivals like SpaceX or something that are launching their own media campaigns that are not very beneficial for Helios. So there needs to be that sort of monitoring and that sort of preparedness for just these sort of situations, which we'll cover next. Which we next come to monitoring dashboard strategy, which of course there is a number of different areas where the company can invest into and be prepared for, which is having a centralized dashboard where everything that they're doing, everything they're monitored is right there so that the experts and those above them who need to be able to see this information can have it all right there. Monitoring social media, looking at what the media is saying, what their competitors are doing, making sure they're also looking inwards and seeing what's being said, what is going on, what do people feel, being able to make sure people are satisfied and that there's nothing going on that might cause a scandal, might cause an issue. And of course, being alert and aware and prepared for cybersecurity issues, and of course, being able to be ready for escalation and being able to have various tiers to this and different responses for different situations, which we'll cover later, which is just right now with crisis escalation framework. So there's obviously a tiered risk model. There's not a one-size-fits-all solution for everything. There's going to be a different response to everything else. You're not going to respond to a minor issue the same way as you have to a major scandal. Those are just two wildly different things with wildly different solutions. So you have your low, medium, and high risks. A low risk is more of, there's people talking on the internet a bit. There's some negative commentary, just small potato stuff that can be handled at a lower level. It's not a major crisis. We don't need to roll out roll out all the big guns and panic. At a medium risk, there's obviously there's something more credible there. Maybe there's some risk of new legislation, of course, going through Congress that okay, we got to be aware of this. Okay, we got to respond to this. Of course, maybe if online discourse grows, okay, like it's growing. Let's get on this. Let's contain it. This is becoming something bigger. It's not just a few angry comments. And then, of course, you go to your more high risk, full-blown crisis sort of situation, which is obviously something has gone horribly wrong. Maybe there is an affair that happens with one of the C-level managers. The CFO gets caught with somebody, at a Coldplay, Coldplay, what is it called? Music festival, whatever. Sorry, but of course, if something very tragic happens, there is a launch failure. There's a loss of life. Hopefully, that doesn't happen, but that is a risk, and they need to be prepared for this because that is no laughing matter. So, of course, you're going to have your plans. You're going to have people in place. You're going to have your procedures that everyone knows who's doing what and when and what needs to be said and to who. You have your crisis assessment group, which includes, your chief communication officer, chief legal officer, head of engineering, everyone who has all the knowledge that to be able to respond to this and being able to formulate a proper plan of attack for these sort of situations and being able to handle it in a way that is both going to solve this situation or help solve the situation rather and not make it worse. And you have to make sure, of course, who's doing what, who's in charge, who at the end of the day is going to be making that approval. And usually that goes, of course, up to the CEO and the heads of the various departments that are, of course, major concern, legal, communication, and so on. These are the people who are going to be ultimately making the main decisions that will be determining what is being said. This is no small thing. And of course, being able to ensure there is a paper trail. There's people that have logged in all this information, have it down so that everything is being kept all nice and tidy and that there's nothing missing or not, that is left out so we can't cause any miscommunication errors. Because if two people are on two different pages, something's going to go wrong. And when there's two different messages, there's confusion and no one likes that. Next, we're going to talk about the stakeholder messaging playbook. And of course, there's going to be different messages tailored to different groups, employees, customers, and media. For the employees, as here we can see, we're looking at the situation, we're, assessing everything, making sure that, employee safety is put out there, very highly, very, in their face so they know that they're being cared for, they're being thought of, that they can be able to trust this company and not lose faith and not hit the panic button. We don't need that. We don't need rumors going around. For customers, they have, significant interest in the company. And so they need to be able to say, are we reliable? Is this safe? Is this a real threat we have to worry about by being tied to you, being invested, with you and doing business with you? So they need to know that things are okay, righting the ship, everything's going to be okay. We're staying steady. And that, of course, that business matters to us. And of course, with the media, we've got to make sure that, we're being very accurate. We're being open about this. We are coordinating with everyone who needs to be involved, the authorities, government, media, customers, everyone. They want to be able to see that sort of transparency as well. And be able to be kept up to date, because that also has to do with speculation. We don't want them running their mouth and creating the narrative for us. Next, we have to come to an ethical response and brand defense principles. And of course, this is a commitment to truth. That's what Helios is about. You don't let misinformation grow in your garden. It's a weed. You got to take it out. So they respond with truth, with facts, with verified data, with transparency, correcting these false claims without amplifying them unnecessarily, but not coming across as defensive, as that can be off-putting, that can worry people. When it comes to handle, we have to handle online backlash, addressing competitive attacks, ethical communication standards, and guardrails, and long-term focus. These are all major concerns for the company, whether it's, acknowledging legitimate issues, not hiding, not lying, not deflecting. It's being respectful of everyone involved, or it's, being able to say, this is something that we have to be accountable for. We have, we're gonna stand by the science. We're going to be open and honest about that, and to make sure, of course, that at the end of the day, there's no one being misled, and that we are making sure that we are protecting the company's reputation, the trust by the stakeholders, from the lowly employee to the major clients to the government. We can't be losing that reputation. That is devastating if you lose it. It takes years to build, and it can be gone in days. And of course, there's going to be training, recovery, and future readiness that we have to be thinking about. There is, of course, going to be a lot of coordination between various different departments in the company, anything from legal to engineering to communication, and of course, executive leadership. These are areas that everyone is working, and they are in very different worlds, but they have to come together to be able to understand and work together and be able to cooperate and coordinate. And that's why you have to be prepared. This is why you plan ahead of time, so you don't have to be finding out what you're doing and who you have to talk to and what you need to say and finding a common message after it's already happened. You have to be able to be responding now. You have to be understanding of any legal, financial ramifications, being able to have all your ducks in a row in those areas, because you don't want to be saying and doing the wrong things, which can absolutely make things even worse. So you plan, you prepare, you run through scenarios, you role play and do simulations. You have to go through training so that this is something you have an idea about what you need to do when you're dealing with the media. Your spokesperson, your leaders, they need to know what it means to deal with the media, for example. That is something you need to be able to handle, that high pressure. And it's never just going to be that you have your answer and you're done. It's going to be that this is a constantly changing and improving situation where you never stop done growing. And so, of course, there is going to be your lessons learned, and this is something that really matters a lot to me when it comes to being able to understand what preparation can do for your company. It can mean what being organized has to do with response and being able to execute your plans, and being able, how being quick and everything. It matters, because in this modern day, you just cannot afford to be slow. You need to be responding rapidly and accurately, making sure who knows what to do and when. Being able, of course, to, as we've talked about, being, keeping your finger on the pulse, monitoring every situation so that this doesn't come out of nowhere. You can see things coming. You can react before something big gets there. You can keep things that are small from growing into some unnecessary large issue that it didn't need to become. Just being able to say that you can be able to survive this and learn from this, so that the plan you had, it may not have been perfect, but you can grow and learn from that. And so that next time something happens, you're even more prepared for that. There's new strategies, there's new plans, there's new scenarios to run. That, in an ever-changing world, there's always going to be uncertainty, and this is the best way you'll be able to handle this and grow.